Hi everyone and welcome to this time lapse. We've got this lovely interior scene. I'm working on the pastel matte paper here. The size is 26 centimeters by 27 centimeters and the color is this dark green. So why I chose to do a smaller size is one of the reasons is the cost of framing. Obviously, it costs much less. The bigger you go, the more costly the framing is, especially the glass, because I have my work framed behind art. Well, I call it art glass, but it's kind of museum quality glass, so it's really expensive. So that's one reason. The second reason is it's easier to store smaller pastel paintings, I find. I don't have a big space. I utilize our dining room of our house is my studio, basically. So it's not a massive room, and I don't really have a lot of storage space. And the third reason is it's easier to record due to my camera setup. So that's why I chose to paint a little bit smaller rather than a bigger piece. Well, it is quite small actually. It's like an A4 size. But anyway, so I generated this image using an AI bot. It's the Mid-Journey bot, and my inspiration for this was I was thinking about doing an interior scene that had strong light, and I was thinking about, I don't know if you've seen the film Great Expectations with Gwyneth Paltrow, and I think it was Ethan Hawke. It was years ago now, but Miss Havisham's house, and it was all very white with lots of lace and dust, and there's something about it was very moody. And so that was my inspiration for this interior scene. So hence why we've got the lace. Everything's very tonal, grays, browns, whites. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. And so that was my inspiration. So I started the actual work by thinking about what's sitting behind the voile. Um, Obviously we painting something transparent, so it's really imperative to get whatever's behind. So I started with some blue sky. You can see a little bit of blue sky, and you can see the window panes, and you can see kind of like some tree-ish abstract shapes. So I started that with my pastel pencils using grays, and then moved down from the top down to the actual wall. So thinking about, okay, so this voile is sitting on top of a wall, skirting board, and a wooden floor. So thinking about those colors, okay, so I'm using more of the browns because the wall has got like this browny tone. It's been ruined by water damage. So I'm putting in the browny tone of the wall and then the browny tones of the wooden floor. And then I will come back over and build up the lighter layers on top of that, which will then look transparent and it will look like the curtain. So within the water damaged wall, I wasn't quite sure how damaged I wanted to go. I didn't want it to be quite as damaged as the reference photograph. But I'm using a lot of grey 5, which is like a, how do I explain? Kind of like a neutral greeny grey, and using a lot of brown. Now, on the wall's a little plate, but I decided to change it to a clock. I don't really know why, I just fancied it. And it was pretty dinky. You can see it's probably the size of my fingertip, maybe a little bit bigger. So quite a thing to get the detail in there. And also I had to be conscious of what time I'm making it. Obviously, if I make this 9 o'clock at night, it's not going to make sense because of the light that's coming in. So I decided to make this like morning light. So quite high white light. So I've made it 7:45 in the morning. This was fun. Painting a painting within a painting. So it's just a scene of clouds and beautiful like sunset. And so I just used a mixture of browns, lots of Mount Vision, and I wanted to keep what the image was in the reference photograph because I think it just added something ethereal again, clouds, heavenlies. It's just got some, it's just adding to the atmosphere of the whole place. So I kept it as is. I don't think I'm finished. Oh yes, I was going to say that doesn't look done. Yeah, there we go. Coming in with lots of unison colors, putting in that orange glow with some beautiful browny goldy colors. Little bit of details with my pastel pencils. I use my pastel pencils in nearly every single piece. I find them so useful. Using a ruler to get those nice straight edges of the frame, because to be honest, sometimes I can freehand no problem with straight lines, and other times I need the help of the ruler because it just ain't working. So I'm mapping in the brightest part of the table first, so I just used my pastel pencil. That's for me to mark out in my brain and to try and keep the whitest parts of the tablecloth white. Then using a mixture of greys, like I used some violet greys, green greys, browny greys to build up the tablecloth. This was quite fun to do, actually, the tablecloth. I had to make some corrections with the skirting board. It went a little bit wonky donkey. But also just mapping in here, you've got to know what's wall, what's table, what's cloth, what's chair. So trying to make sense of everything that's going on in there. And often I'll use the pastel pencils first to map in, like I said, what's chair. And then I'll put a little bit of the background in between the chair, just so I can make sense of what's going on. So same as what I did with the actual voile, the tablecloth is also see-through. So I'm thinking about what is sitting behind that tablecloth and mapping that in. So that's why it's looking quite browny, because the wall behind it is quite browny. The floor, using a lot of Natural Earths by Unison. I find when it comes to wood, the Natural Earths by Unison are just the perfect colors for wood. It's my go-to. You know, when you've got your go-to colors for certain objects? Well, the Natural Earths from Unison is my go-to wood colors. So putting a little bit of the grain of the wood using my pastel pencils, and then not forgetting that beautiful strong light that's coming in. Using a mixture of like orangey tone browns as well as creamy whites. I didn't use any white in the floor yet. Actually, I don't think I use any white in the floor. I use white. I keep the white to the brightest part of the curtain. I'm going to call it a curtain. Yeah, brightest part of the curtain as well as the tablecloth. So you can see I'm using a lot of pastel pencils in this piece. Also creamy yellows, more light pale tans as well as white. You can see me putting in some white now to get that kind of lace effect at the bottom there. Now this is actually schminky white that I'm using. That is the whitest white I have in my collection, and I saved that for, like I said, the brightest parts. Then this pastel I'm using here is a Creta color white, and it's nowhere near as white as the schminky. So I've got different colors of white. It sounds a bit silly, but some whites are more gray in value, some whites are duller in value, and others are lighter. Like I said, the lightest white I have is probably the schminky white. But all the whites are useful. You know, if I just went in with all schminky white, it would look like nothing, you know. So getting those different, slightly nuanced whites creates more of a 3D effect with the work, I find. So for the flowers, you can see really simple, just making marks with different pale tans. There's a little bit of white in there, and there's also a little bit of brown pastel pencil for the actual stems of the flowers. But also, it's just little marks, which, you know, when you step back, makes sense. It looks like it's just little white flowers. So very simple. Doesn't need to be complicated or detailed to get the effect that you want. Straightening up with the ruler because a little bit wonky, and also some of the shadows on the frame were too fat, so you'll see me later go in and sort that out. Right now there's no aspect of the painting that's finished, except I'd probably say the vase and that little marble ornament that's next to the vase. That's completed. So remembering to get in my darks, I'm using Sepia 175 by Faber-Castell. Quite a lot in this piece. It's not black, but it is a beautiful dark brown. Comes in really handy, especially when you've got to do these small little details. So, you know, that chair, that is dinky. That's really quite tiny. So the pastel pencils come in a treat. So you can see me darkening up some areas with the dark grey by Giraud. I just really needed to make sure that the darks are dark enough so that the whites are really going to sing and pop out in this piece. Now, that, as I mentioned earlier, the whitest part of the veil is by Schminky, but I'm using that Kreta color. This is the Schminky that I'm using now. Do you see how much whiter it is compared to the other whites that I've used? So that's going to have the effect of blinding light, which is exactly what I wanted. Again, I didn't copy the exact lace detail you can see on the curtain. I kind of made my own style up. I just wanted to get the same sort of vibe as what was in the reference photograph. Often I'll do that without creating every single detail the same. I just want to get the same effect. I want to make my life simple and I want to enjoy the painting process instead of painstakingly trying to get every single detail in. So if you've enjoyed this, you can see this over on real time on my Patreon. I shall leave a link in the description below. But this is coming to an end now. I hope you've enjoyed this and I shall see you in the next one. Bye for now.